Did you know that Apple had a third co-founder? Well, now you will, because our video for today will take a look at whatever happened to Ronald G. Wayne, the man who helped Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak build Apple. Most computer fans are likely aware of Apple's modest beginnings. In April 1976, then 21-year-old Steve Jobs and then 26-year-old Steve Wozniak started constructing their tech startup company in the garage of Jobs' parents' house. While Steve Jobs did marketing, Steve Wozniak possessed the technological know-how. It was a suitable match, and the business they founded together has now grown to be worth $2.5 trillion. However, most people are unaware that there was a co-founder not as famous as two Steves, a man named Ronald Gerald Wayne. Who is Ronald Wayne? Ronald Wayne, born in Cleveland, Ohio, had a generally ordinary childhood despite his natural curiosity and need to know how things worked. He received his New York School of Industrial Arts diploma in 1953, and he would continue his voyage of self-education in product development, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. At 22, Wayne relocated to the West in search of opportunity. In his 20s and early 30s, Ronald held a variety of occupations until founding his own company in 1971. Wayne ran an engineering company in Las Vegas that focused on slot machines. Wayne was a talented engineer, but wasn't particularly good at managing a business. Sadly, this venture would eventually fail. I discovered very quickly that I had no business being in business. I was far better working in engineering, he said during an interview. Then, Ronald Wayne spent the whole year that followed repaying investors. He returned all the shares at the same price the investors paid. This was not typical for business people, but he wanted to make sure that he made up for the failure of his business. Wayne eventually decided that owning his firm wasn't for him, so he got a job as a chief draftsman at the newly established Atari video game company, where he met Steve Jobs and his friend Steve Wozniak. The three co-founders. Things didn't go well when Jobs first approached Wayne about a potential business opportunity. Even though Jobs was aware of Wayne's prior business failure, he was willing to collaborate. But Ronald didn't budge. He was traumatized by his failure. Wayne and the majority of his co-workers did not like Jobs all that much. Wayne even remarked that he would prefer an ice cube for warmth over Steve Jobs, if given the choice. But he did see the passion and ambition of the then 21-year-old, so Wayne wasn't so quick to reject the next offer. Wayne invited the Steves to his house in 1976. All night, the three discussed the limitless possibility of technology. CPUs were still relatively new at this time. There were no personal computers. There were just kits for DIY hobbyists. After several hours of discussion, Steve Jobs suggested that they form their own business, with the two Steves serving as the CEO and Wayne serving as a minority owner. With his prior business ownership, Wayne did not object to Jobs and Wozniak's determination that this would primarily be their company. So, Jobs and Wozniak would have a 45% stake, leaving 10% for Wayne. Wayne, who was 41 at the time, would serve as a deciding vote whenever the Steves couldn't agree. And on April 1st, 1976, Apple Computer was established. Wayne started working on the Apple Partnership Agreement, which outlined each founder's position within the firm. Basically, Wozniak would be in charge of electrical engineering, Steve Jobs would be the head of marketing, and Wayne would be in charge of mechanical engineering as well as documentation. In addition to creating Apple's original logo, which included an image of Isaac Newton resting beneath an apple tree in the Victorian woodcut style, Wayne was also in charge of authoring the documentation for the Apple I. Everything for this exciting venture was now in place. The paperwork was finished, the prototype was prepared, and funding of $15,000 had been arranged to purchase materials. The initial product was used in a math class at a high school. 200 computers were made, almost all sold in just 10 months. Jobs quickly sold 50 computers to the Byte Shop for an average of $500 apiece. Apple Computer was now moving forward at full speed. but Wayne had quit barely 2 weeks after the contract had been signed. For $800, he returned his ownership of the business to the two Steves. Everything was just starting out for Apple, so why did Ronald Wayne quit? We're about to answer that question, so make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking the red button. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we release a new video. At the time, Apple was a firm formed in home basements and garages, and according to estimates, 20% of small firms fail in their first year, 50% in the first 5, and 65% in the first decade. While we can now see that Apple was a wise investment, this was a significant risk to Wayne. Since the Steves were relatively young, any losses in terms of assets were minimal. Every party to the partnership agreement would be liable for any debt incurred. Wayne was aware of the dangers. Because of his previous company's failure and the speed at which things were moving, Wayne was alarmed, and his resignation will undoubtedly be remembered as one of the most significant wasted opportunities in business history. Wayne said, "My passion wasn't computers in the first place. It was slot machines. I also knew that I was standing in the shadow of giants, and as a result, I knew I was never going to have a product of my own to develop." How much money did Ronald Wayne miss out on? A share of Apple today would be worth $229 billion. After Apple. After leaving Apple, Wayne proceeded to work in various positions across California. He remained employed with Atari until 1978. He would eventually depart and start working for the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and a small electronics company called LDF Semiconductors. In 1980, Apple went public, and Wayne left. Soon after, Wayne followed his other interest and founded a stamp and coin collecting shop. Once the stamp market crashed and there were 2 break-ins, he was compelled to close the store and run his business from home. For a while, his store was fairly successful. Tragically, Ronald Wayne lost his life savings in a house invasion. With just 145 ounces of gold and $3,000 worth of silver in his possession, he retired and relocated to Florida. He was also forced to sell his house to compensate for the losses. While residing in a mobile home in Nevada, Ronald Wayne continues to amass a collection of stamps, rare coins, and other artifacts. He released 2 books in 2011. The books are Adventures of an Apple Founder, a memoir about his experience with fame and fortune, and Insolence of Office, a detailed examination of the history, evolution, and nature of money. A third book, Counterfeit Trust and the Nature of Money, a further investigation into global monetary systems, is currently being crowdfunded. Ronald Wayne maintained contact with the Steves. In interviews, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak have lauded Wayne for being a kind, clever, and gracious man. Unexpectedly, Wayne frequently claims that he doesn't regret leaving Apple as he believes he made the best choice possible given the knowledge. Then again, Ronald Wayne had one regret: selling his original Apple contract copy for $500. The same contract was auctioned for $1.59 million 15 years later. It may seem that Ronald Wayne made the biggest mistake in history, but to him, being safe was better than being sorry. We'll see you in our next video, and always remember, Invictus Luxury, for people who want more.